We do have a quorum present. So agenda item number 2, proof of notification. Mr. Langreich, was there notification?
Yes, there was. We had it distributed out on the board, and then I saw that you had emailed it out, so we were properly posted, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. So agenda item number 3, agenda approval, looking for a motion to approve a 13-point agenda.
So moved.
A motion by Turk, second by Severson. All those in favor of the agenda say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Okay, that motion carries. Agenda item number 4, public comments. Is there anyone from the public who wants to address the committee? Okay, seeing no one, we'll move to agenda item number 5, approval of minutes from the last committee meeting. So I'm looking for a motion to approve those.
Mr. Chair, I don't think that we got those distributed. I would recommend if the next meeting, if we can present the meetings from September 7th and 27th.
Of course. Okay, so we'll skip that one. Agenda item number 6, public education information report. So I listed out 3 sub items under agenda item number 6. So 6A is wage comparisons with peer counties. 6B is staffing level comparisons with peer counties. And then 6C is other updates. And I just highlighted those first 2, 6A and 6B, just because I didn't want those to fly under the radar screen. We haven't had that information before and we've been looking for it. So I just wanted to make sure to call that out. So Mr. Langreich, oh yeah, go ahead, Mr. Carroll.
I'm not seeing a 6C in my folder.
There is no 6C, so I probably didn't number it very accurately. So there are 2 different documents in our folders and online. So 06A is, I believe, a 24-page document that has track changes. This time the page numbers are added, so we can actually see it's 24 pages. 6B is the public education information report without the track changes. And that one is 18 pages.
Right, okay.
Yeah, there is no 6C. But I understand your question. That makes sense. So I thought we would just go through 6A like we did last time with the track changes. So Mr. Langreich, if you could pull that up, and I'll just walk the committee through the changes that are in 06A, so the 24-page report.
Is this the correct one, Mr. Chair?
I think it's still going through the internet. It's trying to get to us. We don't see anything.
Okay, let me try again here. Share. Okay.
We got it. Oh, yep, there it is.
Okay.
Okay, so if you could go to page 3, that's the first new chart. So it's the red and green one.
Okay.
So we've added this new chart. Mr. Unbehan made this one. So I swapped this one in, and then the one that's been pulled out is on the next page, has a red line stricken through it. So if anyone has any comments on these as you're going, as I'm walking through it, just interrupt and share any thoughts. On page 5, the next chart shows the 2022 adopted budget, and it's also shown as expenses being in red, that red bar up top, and then the lower bar, we've got property tax at the left and other revenues on the right side of that lower bar.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, Mr. Unbehan just asked if we want that lower bar, the red portion of it, in a different color, and I suppose we could put that in a different color.
Would make sense.
Mr. Chairman.
That sounds good. Okay, yes, Mr. Seat, go ahead. Mr. Unbehan's gonna work on that.
Is this page 7 or page 5?
So we are on page 5.
So,
Okay, where's the number 5 at? Up in the upper right-hand corner?
No, it's in the
Center bottom.
center bottom.
Center bottom. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Maybe on the document, do you mean without track changes? Is that what you mean? Okay. 7 out of 62. Oh, so yeah, Mr. Langrek is looking at the packet online. So that the page numbers on those are a little different because everything for this whole meeting is in one document, and that's 62 pages long. So if you're looking, if you're like some of us and you have an iPad, then the page numbers would match. If you're looking at the internet, what's on online, the page numbers don't match yet, and you're on page 7 then.
Page
Mr.
7 of
Seep?
62.
Oh, yes. Is that what you're doing too, Mr. Seep? Are you on
Yeah.
that 62-page document? Okay, good to know. Thanks for clarifying that, Mr. Seep. Okay, so page 7 out of 24, or this is probably going to be then page 9 out of 62, if you're following along there. It's got a couple red. It didn't turn out the way I wanted. I wanted one red circle. I don't know why we ended up at 2. I think on the on the document that has changes accepted, I don't think that second one shows up. So this chart should just have one red circle on it. And we've gone back to the stacked with the debt levy on top in orange and the operating levy on the bottom in blue. And then on the next page, that was our chart we had last time. That's been stricken out now, based on some feedback we got last time. If you go to the next chart, it's on page 9 of 24 or 11 out of 62. It says 2022 property tax levy. So now we have expenses shown in red, or basically if there's a reduction or a use of the property tax levy by a department, it's shown in red. If some sort of fund is returning money to the property tax levy or offsetting it, that's shown in green on the bottom portion. And the chart it replaced is shown on the next page. That has a red line stricken through it. So it's color coded now. Then with the next chart, this gets into Health and Human Services. These are the categories that have misconceptions. This chart is new. We've just increased the font size so that it's easier to read. We had a hard time reading it last time. So you'll see that on the next chart has a red line stricken through it. And the next change, we can go through several charts where there have been no changes made. So we go past Pine Valley, we go past state shared revenue. All those remain the same. At the bottom of,
Mr.
go
Chair?
ahead. Yeah.
I was just thinking about the inflation adjusted graph. We've talked about how there's a spread between what the current revenue share is and what it would have been if they had just kept even with inflation. I wonder if we could go ahead and add a cumulative for how much money we would have received over those years as in total. That would also be eye-opening.
Got it. Okay, thank you for that.
Here's an hash.
Okay. So at the bottom of page 17, you're following the bottom of the page, or 19 if you're following the PDF reader at the top. I've got 2 categories. These are just placeholders. So Supervisor Frank I don't think he's here with us today online. The highway department, we've had some misconceptions or some questions come up about it, as well as the campus. And I had a meeting with Clerk Kalish and with Highway Commissioner Josh Elder a couple days ago, and they are working on crunching some numbers related to both the wheel tax and then a lot of other revenues that we're getting through the highway department that are actually much bigger than the wheel tax. So we're going to have some charts, going to show it all together. I actually have an email from Clerk Kalish, haven't had a chance to look at it. He sent it this morning. So if anyone wants to talk about that in a little more detail, I can email that out and we can have that up on the screen. But as of yet, we don't have a chart. We don't have it put in a chart format. And then the next biggest changes are, so on page 19, there are several charts now that show Richland County employee wages for select positions at the county. So if you go to the next page, Clint, there are 6 different charts kind of bunched together. Nope, you got to go back to page, the page above. You went too far, right there. So Ms. Dole made these charts. She did some research. I'm not sure if you can zoom in just a little bit, Clint, but you can see how Richland County compares with certain positions. We're the yellow bar. And then other counties, those are the blue bars. And so these other counties are either counties that physically touch Richland County or that are in a similar population class to Richland County. So they might be a little further flung, like say in Ashland or Bayfield or Dorr or Kewanee counties, but they are more similar to our population. So you can kind of see where our employees fall compared to other counties. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, Supervisor Severson.
I see that we're kind of comparable with the cost what we're paying for some of these positions, and that may be great, but we also got to look at what other market that we have out there, that other jobs that may not take a degree, but take a different type of degree and get it. So let's say, I'll use an example, somebody that's getting, let's say $15 an hour over there needs some type of a therapist degree, but they can go, let's say, to Schreiber's and get $18 to $19 an hour. But yet all the other counties are comparable, but we got this other local competition around us that could be taking workers too.
And I think the work that Carlson Detman did for us, the consultant, they also compared us to some cities, like say the city of Platteville. They had some other ways of looking at it too. It wasn't just about comparing counties to each other. But even, you know, I mean, you take the child and youth case manager over at HHS or the economic support specialists over there as well. They're the lowest paid out of all those counties. Highway patrolmen out at the highway department, only Vernon County is lower than Richland County. Otherwise, everyone else is above us. Sheriff's deputies, I think they're a lot more competitive. If you go just a little bit lower, oh no, I'm sorry, higher. There were 2 more charts that we didn't see there. Child support specialists, they look somewhere in the middle of the pack, and then deputy clerk of court also looks like they are low to middle of the pack. And I know that Ms. Dole did her best to get as many of these as possible, but there are challenges with that. But I was happy to see she was able to get so many. So I don't think our workers are overpaid, and in general, they're probably a little underpaid, and especially in some positions, they are underpaid. So I think these wage increases that we've got forecasted in our 5-year financial plan are 5% in the first year, and then they go down from there, down toward 1.5%. So any other thoughts on the wages? Okay, let's go to the staffing levels then for other counties. So I wrote to, I want to say about 12 counties. I'd say the majority of the counties don't seem to track their employee numbers. It's either in someone's head or I just didn't get a response. So maybe some of them do track it and they just didn't have time to get in touch with me. But I did get responses from 5 counties. You can see here. I think we can get Iowa County too, which would be nice because the comparable population counties, they're all up in northern Wisconsin. The 2 counties that are close to us, they're much bigger than us, so it's a little harder to do the comparison, although you can do it if you do some math, but Grant and Sauk counties. So I tried to simplify it in the chart, and then at the bottom of the chart, there are some notes for each county, but you may have committee members may have other questions about some of these that you can get really in the weeds with this stuff, but I tried to keep it simple. Yeah, Mr. Go ahead. Yeah, Mr. Tripp.
For where there are gray boxes, is that information unavailable? I'm looking at like register and probate. I'm assuming those counties have register and probate, but we just weren't able to get that or what?
So sometimes the register and probate was combined with the clerk of court.
Okay.
That seemed to be a common thing. So where there is a gray box, they didn't provide the information.
Gotcha.
Sometimes I could see, like, one of the counties provided me a list of all their employees and their hourly wage. And then they had those all separated into departments and then they totaled up under each department. So sometimes I could tell what was going on. Sometimes I couldn't tell what was going on. But based on at least one story I heard, I think that might be what is going on in both counties.
Thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Chairman,
Yep, Mr. C.
I'm having a little trouble with my magnifier here. Do you have data here relative to the per capita income, say comparing Door County to Richland County or one of the other county or any of the counties? I think, or do you believe, does the committee believe that per capita income is a relevant factor?
Well, I was thinking of that, Mr. Seep, when I was especially looking at the Health and Human Services numbers, because the number of employees we have at HHS is much higher than our peer counties of similar population class up in northern Wisconsin. So I was wondering, is our income quite a bit lower than Kewaunee, Bayfield, and Burnett counties? So I just pulled out the green book and we can look that up if that's something you're curious about.
Mr. Chair.
Yep.
I think my impression is these are only going to give us very general comparisons. I recall in one of the meetings when it was explained why our HHS had a lot of people who were actually doing work for a consortium with other counties. And so that would make it look like we've got a lot of people doing that, when in reality, the ones that are specifically doing work in Richland would not be that whole number of people. So there's going to be little things like that we need to be careful don't confuse us.
That's a very good point and quite relevant.
So it's our numbers for Richland County. Mr. Severson just asked, what about contracted employees? It does include contracted employees. So other counties, the way they measure their employees, they're always different. So that's why I put the notes next to each one of these. Sometimes they'll give us a figure like Sauk County did with a raw number of all full-time and part-time employees. We don't include part-time employees in our numbers. So that's one caveat that's noted here. Sometimes a county will be really specific about, they will actually show FTEs. So they have a head count, but then they also have an FTE count. And so I can't remember which example that was here, but I used the FTE count and that's noted in the notes down below. So there are some differences like that that you have to take into consideration. The issue with HHS is our economic support unit. We have 15 employees. So I asked Tricia Clements. She hasn't confirmed the number, but she gave me a tentative number that we would probably have 6 employees instead of 15 if we didn't take, if we weren't doing that work for those other counties as well. So then that would take our 75 number down to 66.
And, excuse me.
Yeah.
And while that is an interesting number to note, that's not the service delivery system the state uses, so we wouldn't have an option to just do our own. That's not a choice. We're part of a consortium, so.
Right. Yeah. I don't think we're
I just wouldn't want anybody to get that, well, we can cut down. No, that's not how it works.
right. We get reimbursed for
Yep.
all those employees.
Yep.
And so we're not paying any of the costs for those employees. I think where some of the question in my mind came in when I saw this was when I was thinking about that economic support unit and taking off those 9 employees. I think the question that I have is, why are we at 66 employees? And why are Bayfield, Burnett, and Kewaunee counties between 43 and 47 employees? That's still a 20 employee difference. So that jumps out to me as, it just looks to me like we need to do some more digging. What's going on here? What are the positions we have versus what are the positions those other counties have? I was looking up personal income really quickly. You know, I wasn't seeing like a huge difference, but I didn't have a lot of time to look either.
Well, I would think that Door County would stand out as being quite different.
Door County is not one of the counties. We've got Bayfield, Burnett, and Kewaunee.
All right. I thought you mentioned Door County.
If we could get their county board chair to tell us all their employee numbers, I think we could add them. I haven't asked him. Supervisor Severson's asking about Lafayette County, if we could compare them to us. Yeah, Bayfield County has a per capita personal income of 53 grand a year. Richland, ours is 48 and a half. Burnett County is also 48 and a half.
Mr. Chair.
Yep.
And there may be other demographic factors that play into that too, like age of population and things like that, so. There are multiple factors that could influence the level of services that we provide versus what they do.
Yes, I would think poverty rate might be another one too. That's something in our green book. I think we have % of seniors. Most of the counties did have ADRC, Aging and Disability Resource Center, separate from their Health and Human Services Department, or sometimes they'd have a Human Services Department and a Public Health Department. And so I just combined all those numbers into one to get that 40 some. I think another question might be, are they contracting out things that we haven't in-house? So we would need to look at that too.
So, Mr. Chair, how much more delving or refining do we need to do to this? Will it help us if we keep digging into this, or what do you think?
Well, I think, just looking at the big departments, it does not look like our sheriff's department and our highway department that they're overstaffed compared to the peer counties. Our highway department, we have 550 miles of county highways. And you can't just measure county highways because they're state highways too. And then in some counties, they take care of a lot of town roads. But if we're just looking at county highways, we have almost 600 miles, whereas Bayfield County has 350 miles. So we do with 30 employees what Bayfield County does with 26. And we have not quite, but almost double the amount of county highway miles. So I guess when I look at these and I think what sticks out to me, it does not look like our sheriff's department and highway department have got too many staff in comparison. It's the HHS department that jumps out to me. And I don't know how much capacity I have to dig too far into these numbers.
Right.
But I do think that, say if, and I see Supervisor Glassbrenner's here, if that committee or if, say, the HHS department head wants to dig in a little more, you know, I can certainly help make contacts because now I have some contacts that gave us these numbers. And they might be able to push us to certain people, but I would wonder what questions that committee would have about these numbers and how they could. I think that the issue is we're going to have to figure out if we're going to keep that level of staffing, and we're not going to consider that as a cut, or we want to put that on the referendum. I think we have to have an explanation for the public because it does not look equal right now.
I fully agree with that. People comment on, they have no information. They just see a number of employees there and they point right to it. I think you're right.
So hopefully, Trisha Clemens can help us. We already have a list. Oh, yeah,
Supervisor Murphy Lopez, can I make a
of
comment?
course. Yeah.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. We can hear you loud and
Okay.
clear.
So like I mentioned to you, I did forward that staffing comparison chart to Trisha Clements, and she had taken, that was late this afternoon, so she had taken a fairly brief look at it at this point, but did mention to me that the 3 counties that you have listed there as comparable to us are not necessarily comparable to HHS with what we offer or have in our department. And so I'm waiting to hear more information on her, and I know she wants to do a little more digging as well. But I'm not discounting this. I just think we do need to have some digging and see, you know, when you take all of the factors in, then what does it look like comparing wise? And we do have our meeting on Thursday coming up, where we're definitely looking, because we're still continuing our discussion on the cuts. So definitely looking at staffing levels and what things we need to adjust as well. So I just wanted to put that out there that we will be looking into that.
Great, thank you. And I'm happy to forward on the emails from those 3 counties so you can see the level of detail that we got from those 3 counties, if that's helpful too.
Yeah, that would be great and probably very helpful as far as the questions that Trisha has. I know she's going to be a lot more specific with her background and knowledge than I could be at this point. So yeah, if you want to forward that to both of us, that would be great.
Okay. I do know another example that is kind of nearby that might be interesting to look at is Grant County. So they have, when I talked with their HR director in Grant County, they had a department called Unified. And so I said, well, what is the Unified department? Never heard of this. And she said it was Unified Community Services. And it's a consortium between Grant County and Iowa County to provide mental health services, substance abuse services, and a few other HHS services. And they have 38 employees. They're all Grant County employees because they process the payroll. But she directed me to someone in that department at Grant County who was able to split it out between Iowa and Grant County. And they had 28 employees that were attributed to Grant County residents and 10 or 11 that were attributed to Iowa County residents. So I already split out that number. And so the Iowa County employees, even though they're officially Grant County employees, because Iowa County pays for those and the residents use those services, I pulled those out. And as soon as we get Iowa County's numbers, I'll make sure those are included in Iowa County's. Because yeah, with HHS, you just get into a lot of these things where there's sharing going on, and you do have to do you have to do some digging. Okay, so if I don't hear anything else there. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll point out that if we're trying to compare, we might see some spots where we look a little low. I'm looking at zoning and sanitation and wondering how other counties are doing that. Same with land conservation and parks. And so do we need to look at that also? Just to be even-handed.
Well, so in those counties, I think it is important to look in the notes down below. So, for example, Bayfield County has the most zoning employees at 11. They have 5 land records employees in Bayfield County. I don't quite understand why. Because of all the public lands? Okay. Okay, so that was one thing that jumped out. The Land Conservation Department in Bayfield County has 11 forestry employees. Yep. You're not speaking into the mic though, so I have to repeat. What was that?
It's interesting that they're county employees then, as opposed to some Forest Service or whatever.
Yes.
And I would assume some of these counties have more robust park systems than we do that
That's
might,
it.
Yeah.
like they have active county-owned campgrounds or something like that, that demand more staffing.
Yeah, they like their county parks, unlike down here.
Burnett County, yeah, that their land conservation department, let's see, it has 10 employees and 6 of those are in forestry. And yeah, there were definitely counties with parks employees. And so the way ours is grouped is land conservation and parks. We could separate that out. Sauk County was one that jumped out to me, and we live close to there. We know how many parks are over there. A lot of county parks. They have a lot of county parks employees over in Sauk County.
Fruit.
Mr. Chairman,
Yep, Mr. C.
I think it'll be interesting to look at Tricia's response with regard to human services, staffing, and various programs. I think that we find out, maybe not, but it's important for us to know whether we're comparing apples to oranges or apples to apples in that case.
Yep, we'll look forward to learning more. Yep, Mr. Severson.
I believe the Fair and Recycling Committee should have 2 employees. There's the Fair and Recycling Coordinator and then the maintenance person. Or the groundskeeper, whatever that title is listed under, that mows the lawn.
Okay, I'll look into that.
I think the parks one, on the other hand, though, I think that's actually 1 employee. I think the parks actually budget half of their, for that secretary position with land conservation. And then Kathy is just assigned duties as the parks department head. Because they needed a spot, but she doesn't actually get any salary out of parks. So I don't know if you can technically count her as an employee of parks, but
Yeah, do you think we need to separate
I don't know.
parks? I rounded to the nearest whole number for all of these.
because right now
So-
there's 3 and then 4. If you count Kenny's position that they just filled. And then parks kind of was like, this is the same thing, in the same office.
Yeah, even though we call them different departments because all the land conservation staff are doing the parks work, I just lumped them together because otherwise it seems like it's starting to split hairs. And I didn't have the
Yeah, because
capacity.
they're the same employees that are recorded. Conservation, yeah.
I didn't have the capacity to do decimal points for these. I was just trying to get, something out there. Veterans is another one. It's 1.5 FTE, but it just shows us 2 here because they're rounded. Okay.
You actually could look at this differently too, though. I mean, you take the outliers out, you're at 89 employees. Take Simon's, W Food Service, Valley, all 3 of which have nothing in common with the other 3 counties. We're at 80.
And then it is kind of comparable to those
Then-
other
then
3
it's more
counties.
comparable.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Too.
That's a good one.
Yep, that is a good point, Mr. Embihan.
Just another way of looking at it.
And of course, Pine Valley does add about 10% to our property tax. So it does actually have a, whereas those other departments, Simon's, what'd you say? Food service.
UW Extension, Simon Center.
Well, every other county I talked to at UW Extension, but those other ones are,
UW Food Service.
UW.
Apologies.
yeah, those are fairly low budget, so they don't have much budget impact. Other observations or thoughts? Okay, then we can go to the next page. I think on the next page, I just added, why I was thinking this morning, but I added the words to remain competitive under the county administrators completed a 5-year financial plan that estimates additional revenues that will be needed to deliver those pay increases to remain competitive and fund other county priorities. So those 3 words have been added. Okay with that? And then the charts on the next page. So what I did is the big thing that we debated probably for 5 to 10 minutes was what to call this chart. So I had written down some notes from last time, and so I renamed it to reduction of property tax levy to departments by 2027. Someone had said that and I wrote that down. So that chart's removed, but if you go to the next chart, you can see the new title. Scroll down a little more, Clint.
Okay. Got it there. I got a little bit of lag here. Apologies.
That's okay. Are people in general okay with that new title?
Mr. Chair.
Yep.
Again, I always want to make sure I understand whether we're looking at cumulative through 2027, or is this the reduction in the year 2027?
And I had that in my notes and I didn't have time to address that.
Okay.
I was gonna have to dig out some spreadsheet that Clint had and I couldn't remember where it was and I ran out of time.
Yeah, I think that question will come up.
I do know that Supervisor Luck, she had that question with the Public Safety Committee. And she created a spreadsheet that showed by year what the cuts would be. And then she asked me to look at it to make sure it made sense in relation to this chart. So I think that I'm sure Supervisor Glassbrenner has been thinking about this too. I don't know if you have any thoughts on it.
I'm sorry. Can you repeat the question, Sean? I was distracted.
That's okay.
Got kids in the
So-
background.
Sure, yeah. HHS and veterans has $1 million reduction to the property tax levy by 2027. And everyone's always getting confused by seeing this number and wondering if it's a cumulative number or if it just applies to 2027. And so we don't have any charts yet that show the breakout by year and how it grows over time. So I don't know if you've addressed that in your thinking as you're working with your committee.
Yes, I have. And Trisha and Stephanie at HHS who've been working on this are aware of that. And we talked about that at our last department meeting as well, that they had it broken down by year and we're showing the way that it would accumulate. So I think everyone for our committee should be pretty clear on what that means.
Okay,
If that's
thanks.
what you were asking.
Exactly. What about the Public Works Committee?
It didn't come up, but again, if this is our tool to educate everyone else, then we need to be very sure that it is clear.
Yeah, agreed. So, Mr. Langreck, I don't know if you have that spreadsheet handy, but if you wouldn't mind emailing that to me again, I couldn't find it. And then hopefully this time I can keep it in one spot and then get the charts made.
And you're looking for the financial forecast in which the resolutions were derived. Is that correct?
That's right.
Yep, I can get that to you.
Okay, great, thanks. And then maybe I'll ask Mr. Unbehan to help me with the charts with those once I get it, so. Okay, and so that's it. Those are all the changes. So I think we're just looking for a motion to approve these changes. You know, Supervisor Glassbrenner is here, so I don't know that we need to necessarily refer it, but we could refer it, especially as it relates to HHS, since those numbers I think are going to be a big interest to that committee and that department. So I think the way I wrote it in the cover sheet was a motion to adopt an updated public education information report to use in communicating with the public committees, boards, agencies, and other bodies, and refer staffing comparison information to the HHS and Veterans Standing Committee for use at their upcoming September 29th meeting. So does anyone want to make that motion or something a little different?
I'll
So-
move.
Okay, motion by Severson.
I'll second
Okay.
with discussion.
Go ahead.
So let's kind of talk through this document, how much change we're going to continue to do, and at what point do we feel like we need to lock it in for a while, or we obviously our information will get better over time, but it might end up being confusing if this thing is an iteration happening every week when we start rolling out, trying to educate everyone on what we're trying to do.
Yeah, I think our initial idea was let's get some information out there and not wait till it's perfect before we get it out there. I do think we need the highway, the campus, and the property tax levy reduction information added still. Those are big glaring ones that need to be added. But after those are added, I'm not sure what else. Well, actually, probably some comparisons with other counties. Supervisor Severson and I have talked about that. So it'd be nice to see some budgetary information from a few other counties in Southwest Wisconsin. So we could compare that as well. But those are, I think, the main things. I don't see a lot of other stuff myself. I'm not hearing a lot of other stuff from you folks or others.
I'm ready to vote.
Okay. And all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, that carries unanimously. That. Okay, so let's then go to agenda item number 7, responses from the public to press release and social media posts. So I posted this on Richland County Information Exchange. I got in touch with Mayor Todd, and then Richland Center yesterday and today. Is that what it's called?
I'm not, yes, that's the other one that, yeah, because there's another one, you know, if you're from Richland Center, but I don't, it's a little bit of a different feel.
Oh, sure.
So I'm not sure if that made it in there. It could.
I didn't put it in.
Oh,
or
okay.
Maybe someone else did, but I did.
Okay.
So this, so 07A, in our folders, or if you're following online after those reports, there's a document that looks like a real uninteresting version of Facebook without images. Just has people's names and comments, and then it says like, reply, and share below each one of those. So we did not get anyone saying anything on the other Richland Center yesterday and today. Maybe there was one comment, but there wasn't much there. But here we had some more substantial comments on this page. So it's kind of a back and forth between two people for the most part. They're so our press release, it did get printed in, the Viola paper, the Lafarge paper, the Richland Observer, they called me and interviewed me. So not sure if everyone saw that, but they took pieces of our press release and just took it word for word and then interspersed their own commentary.
It was on the radio too, wasn't it?
Yes, that's right. Joanne Krulotz read it, read our press release 3 days ago, something like that, maybe late last week. I did not hear, well, I shouldn't say I didn't hear from anyone. So I heard there was one person who contacted me who was asking about pensions, and they were wondering if we had pension obligations that were causing these problems. I forwarded that to Mr. Langrek. He replied to them that that wasn't an issue here. We just pay into the Wisconsin retirement funds as costs accumulate, I guess is the way to say it. There was another woman who contacted me from Viola. She had several concerns. She was wondering about us going to referendum when Kickapoo is going to referendum, or I should say they already went to referendum, but they have a increased taxes because of the remodeled pool. And then she had some other comments about is it fair that farmers pay the ag use property tax, that they get a big discount, and that a lot of forest owners get the managed forest law property tax rebate. She was saying that that makes it harder on the rest of property owners. So those are obviously state issues, but might have had a couple other things, but those are the things I'm remembering from the voicemail. So that's all I heard. Did you all hear from anyone?
What's this 5% sales tax or the 0.5% sales tax? Could we increase that 1%? Aaron Detman said that. I don't think we can do that. I think we're locked into that because the state says that we can't increase that.
There are certain special purposes that certain counties have done, but we're not in that group. Like in Sauk County, they have a tourism sales tax. That's what it's called, but because I know the sales tax rate is higher if you go to like the outlet mall and the Dells and stuff.
I think they call that a resort district.
Okay.
And Lake Delton,
Yeah.
quote, had millions of dollars they didn't know what to do with, so said their village president to me.
What a great problem.
Yeah.
Not our problem.
He said that to me. I'm like, wow.
Yeah, and I didn't go on here kind of taking Mayor Todd's advice. I didn't go on here and correct anything, or I didn't reply to anything. But yeah, the sales tax, we're locked in at 0.5%. We can't raise that to 1%.
Right. So I did have a few people, nobody online, a few people when they saw me around town mentioned that they were grateful and they just want more information, a lot more information, which is the point. But you're right. We were right. So let the people talk. Don't correct them yet because that's not going to end well. But I'm glad we got a little bit of back and forth with a few people because that's what that takes to get it seen by more people. And I just think keep the information going through there. Just keep it coming. Because I did have people who saw it. And what we were trying to move from, of course, is the wild assumptions to fact. And people did read it. They didn't just see it, they read it. And that's what we're trying to do.
Good. Okay, that's good to hear. So I did ask Sheriff Porter if he was able to get it on their Facebook page since they get so much traffic. He said they weren't. And he said that he was working with Mr. Langrek and Barb Scott to get it in a format so he could get it on their Facebook page. He said PDF and Word doesn't work well, but I'm not sure. I put it on the Facebook pages and I didn't have a problem. So I don't know if you got any information on that, Mr. Langrek. I'm not quite sure what the issue was there. And I don't know if that's Aaron Wallace who's online, but He's our chief deputy from the sheriff's department. So if he is, feel free to speak up if you know anything about this.
This is Clint. I don't. I'll have to do a follow-up with that, Mr. Chair.
And Sean, this is Aaron. I just actually got back from vacation and I haven't had a chance to talk with Clay yet. I'll be back in the office tomorrow to talk to him about it.
Okay, yeah, great. Thanks for asking him about it, and whatever you all need, just let us know, because I think we're gonna get the most back and forth from the public on your Facebook page. So I think it'd be really great if you all could get it up on yours.
I do too. I think the very best way to share that would be to post it, make that basically the homepage. So the initial posting of the press release right on that page, shared from that page to the other groups. And the reason is because that's where the following is. That's where what then we would all be sharing individually in our own news feed is a popular page that our friends already frequent. And I think that would increase in the Facebook algorithm. I just think they'd share it with more people. Make it the homepage, post it there first, share it from there to everywhere else we want it to go.
And I do think I didn't have time to click on the shares from Richland County Information Exchange, but I think I saw on there it was shared 8 times. And I didn't click on those people. Now, of course, it would depend if I'm friends with them or not, probably, or what their settings are.
Their privacy settings. You know, they can block that so you can't see who it is. Some will, some won't. But the other thing that if you start to dig into that, what you'll start to find too is that some of these people, some of their friends begin a discussion thread then on their home. And that's great too. And then it's important when that happens that we click through and read all of it. Because you may end up with the best debate of all, for instance, on Dave Turk's personal feed. I mean, that can happen. It's just dependent on who saw it where. And that's fine. That's the whole thing counts. All of it counts.
Okay, so hopefully we'll have a little more to report at our next meeting on this. So unless there's anything else on that item, we'll move on to agenda item number 8, a report on presentation at the Richland County Towns Association meeting. So Supervisor Carroll?
Yeah, last Wednesday, Carrie and I were there. When I talked to Jean Nix, she made it sound like, oh, sure, come in. We sometimes have people come in and talk for about 5 minutes on certain things. So I kept it to 5 minutes. So really all that meant was we passed out hard copies. I would say what, 9, 10 of the towns were there.
Yeah, not very.
Yeah, it wasn't
many.
everyone. But anyway, we passed out to the ones who were there. And then I just did a very broad overview of what they're holding in their hands. So we did not go through it page by page. We only got one question, which Carrie answered. One person said, "Where did the money go?" So Carrie explained the very briefly the change due to inflation as one element of that. Anyway, the point is we did not get into a lot of discussion. I wish their format had given us more time, but we did get the information to them. And then since they weren't all there, I sent the file to Jean, who's going to email it to the towns that weren't there. And so it wasn't as much interaction or dissemination as I'd hoped, but we did get something done.
That's great. Well, thanks to both of you for taking the time to be there. Any other thoughts?
We learned more about vacation rentals though than any town business.
That's right. The towns were a lot more involved in discussing the short-term rentals and ATVs. That were the big topics for
Our
that
ATV
night.
ordinance that we passed. They asked more questions about that ordinance that we passed than this thing here.
I believe you. I do. Some of these topics are just hit emotional buttons. And every time.
Okay, well, good. Okay, thanks again for doing that. Item number 9, research on other referendums. So Supervisor Carroll, you sent me 2 links. One of the links we had already looked at our first meeting, so I posted the second link. I downloaded the document, so you want to give a little brief overview of this funding public education in Wisconsin, the property tax school funding dilemma report?
Sure. Yeah, the state of Wisconsin, through the Follow School of Public Affairs, UW has a couple other of these little, I guess you call them think tanks or disciplined experts that look at this stuff, and they're seeing what we're experiencing, that the change in the revenue sharing is causing dilemma. In fact, there was just a news article today on the news talking about this year was like a big spike in school referendums, not just for capital, but for operating expense this year. And so we're not an outlier. We might be ahead of some other counties in hitting this point, but we're not an outlier, and it's a phenomenon that is going to be everyone's trying to deal with.
We're ahead of the counties association and the state legislature in this one.
And speaking of the counties association at the conference, I did talk to the executive for Racine County, and the city of Racine just did an operating levy referendum for public safety, and it failed. And so I asked him if he knew why. And he said that it was because they had 30 open positions in their city police department that they weren't able to fill, yet they were asking for more money for their police department. So from his perspective, it didn't sit well with the public that they were asking for more money when they couldn't use the existing money they had. They couldn't fill the positions they had vacant. So that was his explanation to me about that. I did talk to Kyle Christensen from the Counties Association. He's their lobbyist or legislative affairs person or something like that. He said that, I believe he told me Washington County was going to operating levy referendum in November. So that, I don't know if you've run across that in any of your.
No, because when I went to Department of Revenue, they only gave me the information on referendums that already passed. So one that's in the pipe, they wouldn't have in their database.
Okay, so that might be one that we could look into. Kyle Christensen did say too that they were, the Counties Association is willing to help us with public relations work that we might want to do or might need. So if we decide that we want to do this, that they'd be willing to step in for that.
And that help us on the state front?
So I talked to him about the state shared revenue too. And he said that, yes, he was going to talk to Senator Markline about Richland County and the other counties in his district, and that it was a priority for the Counties Association to have more state shared revenue, which is sort of the opposite of what I heard from Senator Markline. So he said he would talk to the senator about that. So I think we just need to stay abreast of it. So, because that could be a big solution for our money problems if, $1 million comes in the door magically somehow, which I don't think it's going to, but I think we should try because that could be a big solution.
Just catching up from inflation or something.
Catching up from inflation is what I'm referring to.
Yeah.
Right. Wasn't even thinking about your cumulative idea, which is that's a good idea to think of it that way. So any other things people have heard about other referendums or? Okay. Keep moving on here. Thanks for finding that report for us, Steve. It's good to know we're not in the boat alone. Agenda item number 10, correspondence with other committees. I just put this on here in case there had been any correspondence with other committees that folks wanted to share about. I know that several of you have shared this information with other committees. Okay.
Are we,
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
do you think that, I hear a lot of people saying that we're having this committee to discuss, what programs that we want to go to referendum for to fund. Is that what we're doing, or are we just doing it for general, operational costs? So like, are we gonna go take certain departments and put them on the, if we decide referendum is the best way to go? Are we gonna say, yeah, we want to have, fill in a gap of 300,000 for, let's say, the sheriff's department, and 200,000 for zoning, and 100,000 for fair, and put that on the referendum question? Is that like how we're looking at it? Are we looking at it for just extra money?
So in our public information document, we have on here that we're requesting information from committees and departments. We're wanting to know, first of all, 2 points. First point, how each committee plans to describe their identified property tax levy, the reduction to what they're allocated from the property tax. The second item we need is which amounts they want to recommend as a permanent decrease, and which amounts they would like to recommend to us that goes on the operating levy referendum. So it'd be nice if the committees split these into 2 buckets, and maybe they don't have anything in one of the buckets. Maybe they just want to make a permanent decrease and they don't want anything to go on the referendum. Vice versa, maybe they want everything to go on the referendum. We need to know from the committees what they want.
That's what I'm thinking. Like, are we gonna be prepared, like, when every committee wants to be on that referendum?
Can you
Like,
say
we're
that?
getting good facts. We're getting good facts right now on like maybe why we should go, but
Can you say that again? I didn't quite catch it.
like, do we have a plan in place for, like, when every committee, I'm assuming every committee will come back and say, we want this on the operating levy? Are we prepared to go and say, hey, we want every department to have this increase if we decide to go to a referendum?
We're going to have to total the amount of requests up, and we're going to have to look at the number, and then we're going to have to make a decision, this committee, of do we think that number is okay, or do we think that number needs to be changed? So that's really up to us to make a recommendation. I think that's the plan, is that we get all the ideas in, we go through them, and we might need to have some committees, we might need to have a joint meeting, or we might need to have the chair of a committee come to this committee, and we might need to talk to them about, well, you want $1 million, but we think that's too much. And so what could you pull off of that? Maybe that's a discussion we'll have. I don't really know how it's going to go yet. But those are my initial thoughts.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
The other piece that I keep thinking about is being able to craft a referendum that's clear and obvious to folks. I mean, if it starts to look like a spreadsheet, it's going to be pretty murky and hard to explain. So we also need to think about what's easy to understand in a brief thing on a ballot.
And I'm sure our PR folks, if we just go down this route, they would not let us have a spreadsheet. Right. There's no way. But yeah, those are good points, and I think it's a good point you're bringing up, Supervisor Severson. I listened into the conversation at HHS and Veterans last meeting, and I think the initial idea from some of the staff was, well, maybe we put public health and ADRC on the referendum because we think the public would support it. And my mind immediately went to, but then would you cut it? Would we cut it if the referendum fails? And I think that's what we have to, in my opinion, we have to be real clear about. We only want things, in my opinion, we should only put things on the referendum if we're really going to cut them.
That are necessary, I think, to the well-being. I think there may be departments or committees that may put stuff on that they would like to see but really could get by without. How are we going to do? That's where I'm trying to get at.
I don't know the answer, but we're going to have to sift through all that. We got our work cut out for us once these things come back. There'll be some tough decisions. And then in the end, we're just making a recommendation to finance and personnel. So we'll see what they want to do with that. Okay, good points. Let's go ahead and move on to agenda item number 11, presentations at Richland Center City Council and School Boards. So Supervisor Turk, you're going to the next city council meeting?
I believe that's the plan. Am I at the agenda, Mayor?
Mayor Todd is excited to have you.
Yeah, we'll make sure that's on the agenda.
Thank you.
For sure. And you, okay, that's great. In fact, I was going to request that, so I'm glad we're doing it.
I'll give you my song list.
Would you?
Okay, so thanks to both of you for making that happen. And then Mr. Unbehan, did you have a chance to look at your, I believe it was the policy book at the Richland Center School District?
Yes, so I did look at the policy book. Now that I have access to our attorney, such is something on my to-do list to talk to him about. Because we're also going through a third-party consulting company right now, redoing all of our policies. So a lot of things going on, but I'll have the answer for you.
Okay, great. I don't think we knew when we got you on this committee that we'd have our school board president on this committee, so lucky for us. Okay, so we'll look forward to hearing about that. Did I miss anything from any of those agenda items, or did anyone get to say something under one of those agenda items that they wanted to? All right, let's go to number 12 then, future agenda items. So Mr. Unbehan, do you have any?
Do not.
Mayor Coppernoll?
Mr. Brewer, Mr. County Board Chair Brewer and I will be at WRCO on Monday at 9 to do the morning show. If you'd like a recap of that, we'd certainly be able to do that here. We probably should. And I'll also recap some of these other things. For example, we had a great presentation at the natatorium board that you did, explaining to them some of these things, or that we had there to explain some of these things. I think to your point, I don't remember what you said, going forward in an answer to Mr. Severson, that we may need some committee chairs and department heads. I think so. So maybe the first foray is to have Marty and I recap what we do on the radio and just keep that coming, because I think you said it exactly right. There's going to be some difficult choices. And go ahead. Okay, and Carrie's questions are on point. You're right. What department head is going to say, I don't need this, or I don't, they're not, it's not even human nature to do that. So I think starting to bring some of those folks in here makes a lot of sense.
Okay, good ideas for future agenda items. If anyone knows of any particular department head or committee chair who you think should be at our next meeting, just make sure to let me know, so that we make that happen. Now, most of the reports are due October 31st. So we could wait for those to come in, but we'll have to be careful not to put too much work on the back end, because we probably have to have a recommendation by the end of the calendar year. So we'll have a lot of work to do in November. So if there are anyone you think should come to this committee sooner, just let me know on the agenda. So Supervisor Severson?
Nothing.
Okay, Supervisor Turk?
I saw the list of suggested topics for videos that you shared with me from the previous meeting that I wasn't able to attend, so I'll try to have some draft ideas put together by the next meeting to share with the committee and see if we want to get moving forward on getting those produced and out there.
Great, thank you so much. Supervisor Carroll?
It's not so much an agenda item, just want to make sure that if we're going to get our input on October 31st, do we want to right now schedule a meeting like very soon after that, in addition to what our quote unquote normal meeting dates are?
Yes, and I think that's fine with me if we want to go ahead and plan the next two meetings as we adjourn here. So I think that's a good segue.
I don't have access to my schedule.
Okay.
just because I've been off of work for that, my password's expired and haven't renewed them yet. So I can't look and see when I'm sure. So you could have picked meetings that fall in those 2 days.
Okay. So as far as timing goes, we have this report to take another look at. We might have some videos from Supervisor Turk. We'll have the radio update. This meeting was 3 weeks after our last one. I think our last one was on the 7th, and this is the 27th. So are we okay with another meeting in 3 weeks? Is that, yeah, Supervisor Turk, did you?
I think it depends on how much you want to get done before we get the big reports back from everybody. If we want to accomplish some things before that, I think we should look at because we'd have time to do 2 meetings in 2 weeks before that 31st deadline.
Okay, so you're thinking 2 weeks.
You know, if we looked at like the 10th and the 24th or Monday nights, it's just an example. You know,
And so if I can, Mr. Chair,
Yep, go ahead.
so I think we're anticipating having all the reports back in by the 31st. If I remember right on the resolutions though, they're submitting those back to Finance and Personnel. Finance and Personnel would meet on November 1st is when I plan on bringing those to that committee to have a kick at it. So that's where I see them as destinations to the best of my knowledge.
Okay, so we could schedule a meeting basically right after the first, and finance would have looked at it, so I think that's probably good for us. That timing. So let's just look at Monday, October 10th. Does that work for folks?
works for me. I believe so.
You don't know. Yeah.
I'm good. It says Columbus Day on my, is that because I'm wrong for anyone?
Does the county celebrate Columbus Day? That's not good. Okay.
We ferociously celebrate it, but we will be at work, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Okay. And then Mr. Cooey, are you available? Is MIS available Monday the 10th? Yeah. You are. Okay, and we're not putting too much on you next to other meetings? Okay. All right, so if we do Monday the 10th, that gives us the opportunity to do the 24th. Do you all want to go ahead and pencil in a date for early November?
One thing with that is in October and November, that's when the city's doing its budget process, which of course I'll be a part of, and I don't have all of those meetings scheduled. The administrator will be doing that. So it's possible we could schedule one and I could end up with a conflict, but that might be unavoidable.
Well, maybe how about we just do the 10th for now? And then when we come back on the 10th, we'll try to figure out the other meetings, and then hopefully Supervisor Severson will have his schedule. You'll have your budget schedule. So, okay. So, and then 6:30, we moved it to 6:30.
That's fine.
Did that work better for you?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, great. So let's look for a motion here to adjourn to Monday, October 10th at 6:30 p.m.
I move we adjourn.
I'll second.
Okay, motion by Caro, second by Turk. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, we're adjourned. Thanks, everybody.